The mind can be a relentless force, constantly pulling us outward, tempting us to act and pushing us to stay busy. It is a subtle trickster, trying to assume the role of a boss, making us feel inadequate if we simply choose to be still. The mind often whispers, "You're not doing enough. You're not worth anything if you remain idle." This incessant chatter convinces us that productivity and action are the only paths to a meaningful life. Yet, what we fail to realize is that this is just a thought, a preconceived idea shaped by our past behaviors and societal conditioning. The mind creates an illusion of urgency, making us believe that we must act, that we must engage, that sitting still is a waste of time. But what if we didn't engage with these thoughts? What if we recognized them for what they truly are? Just thoughts, not commands. Even acknowledging the mind's tricks, such as recognizing that it is creating problems or confusion, can inadvertently give it power. This is why it is crucial to go a step further and simply ignore the mind. Imagine the mind as a bad neighbor, one who's neither a friend or an enemy, just someone you have to deal with. The best strategy with such a neighbor is to ignore them, not to get involved in their dramas or their noise. This is precisely how we should treat our minds. Ignore the mind at all costs, in all situations, at all times. Whatever it says, whatever it doesn't say, choose not to listen. This question is more powerful than it seems. It brings us to the core of all spiritual teachings, which emphasize mindfulness and awareness. Many practices encourage us to watch our thoughts, to be mindful of the sensations and emotions that arise. But why should we watch our thoughts? Are we paranoid about them? This approach might help us become aware, but it often still keeps us entangled in the mind's games. Instead, we should look deeper. Who is it that is being disturbed by these thoughts? When you ask this, you may realize that the thoughts are not yours. They are not meant for you, the true self. The thoughts are for the false self, the ego that believes it is the doer, the one who must plan, act, and control. This is the greatest misconception, believing that we are the ones doing everything when, in fact, everything is being done by the Absolute. Taking credit for what is happening naturally, as if it is our doing, is the first and greatest sin. It is as if someone else is doing all the work and we are merely claiming it as our own. This illusion is beautifully illustrated by a humorous story of a person with two dogs. One dog does all the hard work, swimming in a pond to retrieve a ball, only for the other dog to snatch the ball at the last moment and present it to the master as if it were the one who did all the work. This is what the ego does, taking credit for what the Absolute has done. This egoic behavior is rooted in a deep-seated belief that I have to do, I have to plan, if I don't, nothing will happen. We don't give any credit to the divine, to the greater force that is actually orchestrating everything. Trusting this force, surrendering to it, is what true faith is about. Our whole life is built on trust, whether we realize it or not. From the moment we get into a car and drive down a road, trusting that we will reach our destination safely, to boarding an airplane, trusting the pilot to navigate us through the skies, our lives are steeped in trust. But it is only when the ego steps in that we lose this trust. We start to believe that we are in control, that we must do something to ensure everything turns out okay. Yet, the most profound example of trust is perhaps the trust we had as children. When our mother introduced us to our father, we believed without question that he was our father. This trust was innate, pure, and untainted by doubt or fear. It is this kind of trust we need to rediscover within ourselves. Trust in the Absolute, trust in the divine, and trust in the natural flow of life. When you embrace this trust, you begin to understand the true power of silence. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the presence of something deeper, something eternal. Silence is always there, underlying everything, even before the mind came into existence. The mind is the latecomer, the one creating all the noise, all the illusions. The world runs on the mind's energy, creating an illusion that we must always be productive, always doing something to have value. But this is the greatest trap of all. This return to silence is not just a metaphor, it is the path to true freedom. When you choose silence over the mind, you allow silence to choose you. Silence is eternal, always present, waiting for you to recognize it. When you do, you realize that all the noise, all the restlessness, was just a creation of the mind. The world outside the mind is silence, and silence is far more prevalent than noise. It is the mind that makes the world seem noisy, chaotic. The moment you step back and witness everything without engaging, without fighting, silence envelops you. In this silence there is no doership, no ego, no sense of I must do this, or I must accomplish that. The mind's chatter becomes irrelevant. You start to see the mind as something external, something that is not really you. It is like the outer noise, something that exists but does not define you. The mind may still be active, creating thoughts and illusions, but you remain untouched, observing from a place of deep stillness. This practice of choosing silence over the mind is not just a temporary escape, it is a way of life. It is a continuous practice, one that begins the moment you wake up and continues until you go to sleep. As your practice deepens, even in your dreams, you will remain a witness, watching rather than getting involved. You will see that the mind dreams, the mind wakes, the mind sleeps, but you are always aware, always present, always in silence. When you live from this place of silence, the mind loses its grip on you. It can no longer disturb you with its thoughts and illusions because you no longer identify with it. You realize that you are not the mind, not the body, not the thoughts. You are the awareness in which all these things appear and disappear. This awareness is unchanging, eternal, and free. And so, when the mind tempts you to act, to do something, to be someone, simply remain silent. Trust that the true doer, the Absolute, is already handling everything perfectly. Surrender the idea that you need to do anything, that you need to control anything. The mind will resist, creating fears and doubts, but do not be swayed. Stay in your silence and watch as the mind's power diminishes. In this silence, you will find true peace, true freedom. You will realize that all the noise, all the activity was just the mind's way of keeping you distracted, keeping you from discovering the truth of who you are. But once you embrace silence, there is no going back. Silence becomes your constant companion, your true self, and in this silence, you find everything you have been searching for. This is the power of silence. This is the path to true liberation. Choose silence and let silence choose you.